Hello, and welcome back to Bricked and Mortared. Last year, Auckland Council proposed to add roughly $100,000 to the cost of building a home. Now, many of these homes will be called affordable homes. The cost of building will no longer be $200,000, say materials with labour, excluding land. It'll now be $300,000. So your development contribution will add 1/3 to the building cost. Developers in their right minds won't build these houses. It's far better to run with the lowest option, which is just to leave a single house on there with a family in it or rent it out. Infrastructure growth payments will therefore not come from new infill developments. Mums and dads do not want to be council's charity, or as the Deputy Mayor said last week, an ATM machine, along with ratepayers. When the numbers came out, I eyeballed them. What were they behind this? And I was shocked after looking at the spreadsheets. Now, I'm no spreadsheet guru. I've never worked for council. In fact, come from quite a different industry. I was able to thrash my way through it, and what I saw did not add up. Thankfully, someone else within the industry did the same and had an even stronger reaction than I did. So as a result of the red zoning for water care, where we found that we no longer had water connections, a group formed, and it morphed into a large group very, very fast. We called it SANS, Subdivision Advocacy New Zealand. I'm one of the 2 directors of that, along with Matthew Gilligan from GRA. We're heavily supported by people that just want to be a member. There's no cost of membership. We also have an extremely professional executive team behind us. They have to remain confidential for good business reasons. We decided to actually unpack these numbers. I listed them and described my observations earlier this year and published them on this podcast chain, but now we've actually had them verified. So there are multiple issues, in my opinion, very serious flaws. But unpacking the numbers is step 1. What makes up the engine of these contributions? So after fundraising, we engaged Adam Thompson from Urban Economics, who had been recommended to us. So here, I'm Kirsty Merriman, a bespoke infill property developer, and I, in this podcast, will tell you about Auckland's development contributions. And I'll walk you through them, explain what's going on in fairly simple terms. But first up, what are development contributions anyway? Well, they're fees and costs that new homes have to pay to help cover the cost of infrastructure. So the idea is that you pay a fair, equitable and proportionate share of these costs. The current proposal does not meet that. What I'm going to do is step you through 5 of those observations we found within the spreadsheet. First up, it'll be the money mathematics just doesn't add up or follow normal accounting practices. Second will be way too high just in case costs, contingencies. Third will be the land price assumptions just aren't right. Then I'll go on to pay now, get later, if you're lucky. And then touch on house forecast numbers just don't even track reality. So let's start with the money mathematics not adding up. I'll have calculated a weird quirk. Well, they assume construction costs go up at 3.1%. Yeah, I can accept that. And land goes up 7.1%. Yeah, I can accept that. So they've got things going up like this. Costs going up over 30 years or 10 years or 20 years, whatever they decide, going up. So they get to this point here. This is the cost. But then they say, we're going to share this cost at this price all the way back. But if you've built your house here, you're paying 30-year forward price here. These guys have built their house here and they're paying a much lesser price here. Normally, it would be discounted back. So the price would go up and then your charges would go up accordingly. That's not fair. They're not doing that. Then the other thing they're doing is they've got way high just-in-case money. Any developer knows you don't get things right, so you put a contingency in. Normally, so I would put a 10% contingency in. Through COVID, when things were wrong, it would be a 20% contingency. But council are adding 50% to their buffer for some of their projects. In fact, some of the infill projects that ratepayers are paying the most for have got 70% contingency added. For example, they want to build new or replace footpaths in Wangari. The project starts at $60 million. They add a 70% contingency in case they get it wrong. that project ends up being $60 million. 85% of that cost is paid for by ratepayers because it's renewal or upgrading. Only 15% of that cost is paid for by new housing. It affects ratepayers too. Just in case is far too high, the benchmark is around 10%. Where did they get their 50 or 70% from? I don't know. I have looked up papers for benchmarking in Australia. They don't get there. Then, of course, the land price assumptions are off the charts. Now, if you plan in advance and you want to do parks and reserves, you're going to get the land that's not ideal for building houses on. That land may end up being a pond during a storm. That does not cost the same amount as residential land. They've costed all land at about $1,300 to $1,500 per square metre everywhere. In fact, some land is so bad no one will build on it, and you may pay $100 to $200 per square metre. That's not right. And then on top of that, they're adding a 30% contingency on land costs, when 10% is about the norm. Very, very padded estimate there. And then we've got the issue of pay now, get infrastructure eventually. And that kind of leads to a chicken and egg. In some cases, new homes are being asked to pay for infrastructure that won't be built for 10 to 20 years' time. 30 years. Now, let's just imagine that you want a house to live in to rent. Rent now is $700. Rent in 30 years is going to be, let's say for easy mathematics, $2,100. You are told, yes, you can have that house to rent in 30 years' time, but you have to pay that price of $2,100 today, and you have to make do without it. Maybe living in a tent until in 30 years' time, we've built that house for you, and you pay your $2,100 today. Oh, but you'll probably get it. We can't guarantee it. You'll have paid for it now, though. Well, I'd be happy to pay now if it was discounted and appropriate, but it's not. And then we have the other issue, which is quite a significant issue here, really. That's that the housing growth forecasts are way off. Now, if I look at Papakura, they have got, over the past 8 or so years, built about 750 new houses per annum, so every year. But going forwards, they've forecast 75. Now, why 75? I don't know the answer to that. Is that because the costs are now so high, Veolia is blocking everything, that no one can build? But the same amount of money still has to be paid. So instead of sharing it over 750 people, they're sharing those exact same costs over 75 people. It doesn't work out. Why are the forecasts not being adapted or adjusted for reality to make them fair, equitable, and proportionate? It's got to work out. It's the last man standing in Papakura that's going to be paying. Well, of course, they are the 5 top spreadsheet issues. But the whole thing comes down to procurement. And Matt, in my opinion, this stuff is being done for far too much. We can do it smarter and faster and get more clever funding. So the engine is flawed. The procurement is flawed. The numbers are flawed. If I were the Auckland Council, I would back out gracefully. I would say, hey, the government's come in, they're proposing a new system with a referee or ringmaster. They're going to standardise things. They've got a levy system coming in. Let's just park this. Let's back out and wait for the levy system. Simple. At the moment, we can't do anything. Overall, this is harming mostly our affordable homes. Developers and builders are not charities. Building won't happen, people leave. So that's it. An opinion, Bricked and Mortared, and information sponsored and fundraised by the wider Auckland developers, and work summarised done by Urban Economics. Thank you all, and see you next time.